Hello, and welcome back to Have You Eaten Yet, the podcast where we talk about all things Asian health and wellness.
This is episode 3 of our podcast, where we continue talking about the top issues that AAPI community faces with Dr. D.
If you haven't listened to our second episode yet, be sure to listen to that episode first, so you can get up to speed on what we've been discussing.
Without further ado, let's jump back into the interview. Since you mentioned this, Dr. D, the CDC has heart disease at number 2 for
Really?
For like Asian like Americans, like things they struggle with. Heart disease is number 2. So for those of you that are listening, heart disease is actually an umbrella term for different conditions that affect the heart. This can include coronary artery disease, which is the most common type of heart disease in the United States, heart arrhythmias, heart valve disease, and more. These diseases reduce blood flow to the heart, which can cause heart attacks and heart failure.
We've talked about this already a bit and how, high blood pressure, diabetes, stress, lifestyle choices, all of these factors can lead into having heart disease. And, I think about a family friend, and a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, a family friend of ours actually suffered a stroke, and she, had been having problems with her heart. And because of, like we mentioned before, lack of access to healthcare, she actually could not, take Western medicine, treatment for her heart. She actually looked into sort of like Asian medicine, like Asian herbs, Chinese herbs. But ultimately, she actually ended up having a stroke, and it was really, really terrible. And so I think about all these factors in my own life and how they've impacted the people around me.
I'm just curious, how did the stroke impact her life without revealing too much? But, I just want to make the point of how devastating it can be. Like, you can't run a business if you've had a serious stroke. That's it. It stops.
Right. So her son had to become her caretaker because she was basically, now homebound, and she had to go to physical therapy to learn how to walk again. And she was having a lot of trouble with her balance, a lot of trouble with speaking, and just it was really, really terrible. It really affected her life in a big way.
Yeah, these are really serious conditions. And I'm actually rather sad to see these statistics. I kind of, empirically knew that these were challenges in the AAPI community, but I didn't realize that they were that prevalent. I didn't know heart disease was ranked number 2 and stroke number 3.
Yes, I definitely have people in my family as well who, have some high blood pressure issues, who are kind of like on the borderline for heart disease or high blood pressure. And so it's definitely sort of a scary thing to think about, especially when, like we've mentioned before, we can't always see these issues coming up physically. And it's not until we go to the doctor for, a checkup, blood test, which not everyone has access to, that we start to realize that we have these issues. But oftentimes they go untreated.
Mm-hmm. Which is like actually one of the things I've noticed, like when you fill out forms, like when you're at the doctor's office or just like in general, your vaccine maybe, they ask you like if you have any of these conditions or if anyone in your family has these. But I feel like the community sometimes we're so like quiet about it that we don't tell each other, so that when your kids are filling out these forms, they don't even know that like this is happening. So I think that can cause problems too in like detecting like early signs.
Definitely. I mean, I relate to that in what we were bringing up before in the aspect of isolation, because it's just me and my parents here. And so I'm very aware of what, me and my parents go through. But whenever I get those questions like, oh, does anyone in your family have these various conditions? Like, I'm not connected to them. I don't, I don't talk to them very often. We don't have a lot of communication. And so I don't actually know if my family members have these conditions because we've been so isolated for pretty much almost all of my life. And so that definitely causes issues.
Yeah, it literally bounces off one another, all of this.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
And you, in addition to being distant from your extended family to know your medical history, you guys have both brought up a very important point that in the AAPI community, about 60% are first generation immigrants who need the second generation American born children and adult children to help fill out these forms. And I don't know about your family, but in my family, the Asian side, the elders do not talk to you about their health. So I don't think I could fill out a form for my mother.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, something that I've also struggled with, not to air out my mom like this, but she like, I mean, even like my father too, or just even like relatives in general. I guess I'm gonna air everybody out, but they don't want to put some of these things on there. It's kind of like shameful to them. They're like, no, like we're healthy. Like no one can know this, but it's like it's your doctor. Like they're gonna know this. Like what's so bad about that? But they're worried that they're gonna be seen differently. They're gonna be seen as weak. So even to address these issues with the doctor, sometimes there's like this internal conflict where I think like their perception of themselves and like society also affects how they want their doctor to see them. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
and don't feel bad about mentioning it. I mean, this is the dynamic in every family that
Yeah.
I've known of, and the main thing is this discussion is to help that actually.
Yeah.
It's to help healthcare providers and others be aware that maybe we need to dig a little deeper and try to find out, actively ask some of these questions,
Hmm.
because maybe the adult children who are helping to fill out forms aren't able to ask those questions or provide those answers.
Definitely. And I really hope that this platform that we're kind of opening up today, this conversation we're having, can open up other conversations that the
Hmm.
AAPI community can have within their households. Because
Yeah.
it's definitely not something that's shameful. I've
Hmm.
experienced that same thing where, I've had family members, tell me like, oh, like don't say that, like don't tell them that. But it's like, it's important for your health for people to know this information.
It helps you get the help you need. I'm gonna
Hmm.
I'm gonna air out my mom. I think at her age, at 96, she wouldn't mind, but she had a brain tumor and she did not tell me until a day before the surgery.
Oh,
So
Oh.
you can imagine, I know she was trying to protect us, which is, normal Asian parent, but what it did was make it a little hard for us to be there to help her once she had the surgery, because we didn't have time to kind of think about, how to provide support. We did, but there it's not a shameful thing to talk about being sick, because that's how people can help you. I know that in our culture it's shameful to complain, but that's how people can help you if you at least let people know.
we definitely need a good support system to help us in whatever struggles we may have, whether it's, physical or mental illness.
For sure. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed here that we were saying that heart disease is way up there on the list at number 2. And I wanted to specifically point out that there have been increasing studies that have found that East Indian men, young people,
Hmm.
have a very high rate of coronary artery disease and heart attacks, and that providers, doctors, families should be aware of that and make sure that young East Indian men get, and women, but more men at younger ages, get screened for high blood pressure and coronary artery disease, because it's totally preventable. I wish I could tell you why. I don't know why. I don't know if,
That's interesting.
yeah, I don't know.
That is interesting.
That is in United States, to my knowledge. So maybe it's something to do with, changing countries and stress and diet. I
I
don't know.
think like I feel like the thing about like that's interesting to me about this is like if we talk about stress, um, I wonder why it's them specifically. Like what about theirs could be a little different, or maybe it's like diet. But I do know like in Indian culture, often like the men, they're kind of seen as like the head of the household.
Mhm.
And usually like our families are big. Like if you look at our families back home, like we have so many extended relatives, but when there's literally just even one person that's in the States, they end up having to take care of everyone
Yeah,
regardless.
yeah.
Because it's seen that if you're in the US, you've made it. That's just kind of what it's seen as. And I think when they're sent to the US, it's like a lot of pressure of like, okay, now you are going to be the person that runs the house or
Mhm.
houses. If your sister's married or your sisters are married off, like they are also your responsibility, all of it. And I think that saving face is a big thing. So I could see why the stress can really lead to all of this because it's a lot. And I see my own father go through it.
I'm glad you brought that up. Social determinants of health. Um,
Hmm.
uh, my husband's family are Mediterranean. We see this in Mediterranean cultures who've come to America as well.
Hmm.
Exactly the same. The men are the head of the household. The responsibilities on them, and all most of most of the family are looking to them for money, for help, for support, send money home, help us when we get here. And that's a lot for a middle-aged guy.
Oh, for sure. Which then I think impacts just like their access. Because if you're spending all this on other things, like you can't get the best insurance or whatever it may be that you need for your health to get better. So it's just, again, it bounces off one another.
Yeah.
I think it goes to show that the immigrant experience is very much shared across many different cultures.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right. So we've had a really great conversation about, heart disease and stroke. And I want to move to actually number one, because we've kind of been dancing around all of these, top issues that the Asian American community faces. But at number one, we actually have cancer. So for everyone listening, of course, we'll do a general overview. Cancer is a disease in which some of the body's cells grow uncontrollably and spread to other parts of the body. These cells can then cause tumors, which invade nearby body tissue. And there are many different types of cancer that affect different parts of the body, from the digestive and reproductive systems to the bones and skin, and a lot more.
It's surprising too that it's number one. In the United States, heart disease is number one and cancer is number two. So cancer, one of the reasons might be that preventive care and screening is a huge factor in cancer deaths or not death, right? So that might be one big contributing factor. The other thing is lifestyle. Cancer has a lot to do with, food that you eat, what you drink, the air you breathe. It's a lot of it is driven by particulate matter in the air. And if we work in businesses and industries where there's, pollution and exposure to different environmental factors, we could have higher risk of cancer as well.
Dr. D, I have a question for you. So throughout like your experience, in the health world, so when it comes to cancer, do you think that a lot of Asian men struggle with it when it comes to like liver because of like alcoholism?
Yeah, I was kind of alluding to that, right? So, obviously number one causes of cancer are smoking, alcohol intake, and there's this weird link between, I'm not saying that this is the number one cause, but there is a link to viral infections younger in life and developing cancers later on. But oddly, stomach cancer is a big proportion of cancers in the AAPI community. So maybe having to do with eating certain foods, not sure. But the main thing is, it's, screening is key. If you don't catch cancer early enough, you can't treat it.
Yeah, I mean, like I wanted to bring up alcohol specifically because I've noticed that like Asian culture, we have a lot of alcohol use, whether it's like the work culture or like, partying or anything. Like I'm Punjabi, and typically this side of like India, we're known for like our lavish parties and the drinking culture. And I've noticed that, sometimes like I've watched videos like for Japan, like how they have like after work events, and they have like the different, I guess, like bars that they can usually go to, or like even Korea, I think they have like phase one, they like kind of warm up and then like they break the ice and they kind of like have a bunch of stages throughout the night. So it's just really interesting how much alcohol can be used for different things in our culture.
I think alcohol is very much embedded into our cultures as a social practice, not just, for like big parties that we're throwing, but even casually, right? Having a meal together, the alcohol is there, it's present, and it's very much a normalized thing.
And it's kind of funny because everybody says Asians can't drink, because of the Asian flush, right? One drink and you turn red. But that's a different issue than being able to tolerate and have it part of your social culture. But cancer is a problem all across the country. It's just a little surprising that it's number one in the AAPI community compared to number two.
Yeah, I definitely think some issues with preventative care may be a big cause, like we were talking about earlier, especially because growing up, I never went to checkups. Like checkups is not something that my family does. I don't know if this is like a sort of universal thing among like the immigrant community, among like the AAPI community, but we never went to the doctor unless something was really wrong that we couldn't solve ourselves. And so things that that would involve preventative care, we would never know about because I would go years and years without ever going to the doctor.
Yeah, we have a this Humana peer-to-peer support storefront project, we've been talking to a lot of people in the community, and very consistently people say, well, it's not part of our culture to go for preventive care. We go when we're sick. We try to manage things at home with, diet and herbs and just, our own traditional ways.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on like a huge cut. Like it'll only stop the blood a little bit or in a certain area, but it won't get to the root of what happened. So I think we tend to do that. Like, so like I also like, for me, I never really did all those kind of screenings, and like we didn't really have like, like a regular doctor that we always went to. It was just kind of like, we'll figure it out once it happens. And if it's really serious, then we'll go and get it checked out. But I think it's a universal experience.
Yeah, and I would just, want to mention when it comes to, public health and the way biomedical science approaches the social determinants of health and Asian American health, it's important to recognize that the NIH has spent very little funding on the AAPI community, and also that it lumps all AAPI people in one big giant group, when in fact there's like, I think I read like 34 or 35 different, Asian ethnicities. I would argue more, because I'm Chinese and I know there's like 20 different kinds of Chinese.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that needs to be done to understand how to deliver better care to the AAPI community. But in the meantime, for the AAPI community, this kind of conversation is really important, just to be aware and try to help ourselves while we can in a peer-to-peer fashion.
Absolutely. Like we were saying at the beginning of this episode, what we're providing today is a very general overview of issues that the AAPI community faces, but there are definitely steps that we need to take to, put more research into this, further break this down, and hopefully, help everyone, because of course, Asia is so diverse. The population that we have is so ethnically diverse, and all of that impacts the way that we live our lives and the health issues that we may face.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of commonality in terms of culture, but there's a lot of diversity in food, in family structure, etc.
Yeah, it's really interesting to be able to have like these conversations, because I think all three of us have pretty different like backgrounds in certain ways. So being able to relate on it, it's pretty heartwarming. I think it's nice to like feel that community sense, which is why I think that like the project is just so important and so necessary.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, have you girls eaten yet?
Wait, that's
not yet, actually.
No, I did not eat today.
Oops.
Oh, shame on you. You better eat.
Oh, wait, no. I had an iced tea. I had iced tea.
One
like
iced tea.
I'm like freestyling life right now. Like my one iced coffee and me against the world. That's it. That's what's going on today. I do need to eat though.
We'll definitely get our food in after this episode though.
Wait, hold on.
What?
If Dr. D's asking us this question, did you eat today, Dr. D?
Yes. What did you eat today, Dr. D?
Yeah.
Plenty.
But
plenty.
what?
Anything from like 2 cappuccinos to a salad, a healthy salad from the hospital cafeteria. And that's about it.
2 cappuccinos.
Yeah, loaded with milk.
But my iced coffee was bad.
Well, only because you need to eat more.
That's true. I am really hungry.
Oh, we'll definitely get our food in soon then. I really loved our conversation today. I thought it was really great, and we learned a lot.
Oh, we did.
Me too. And I'm so encouraged by the wisdom of the young people. And you guys are doing an amazing job. We really love these conversations.
We're able to do these things because of people like you, Dr. D. So we're very happy that you're here and you're talking to us. We know you're very busy. So, it's people like you that are very, well-versed and know about the community that come in and talk to us, and other, individuals like us. I think you guys are the reason why we want to continue this. So I think it's really nice to be able to have these conversations. So. Thank you.
Yeah,
Been a
thank you
pleasure.
so much for joining us today on this episode. It was really nice talking to you, and I'm sure everybody really loves hearing from you.